Are you ready to learn what it takes to be a successful attorney? You're listening to Corner Office with me, Elise Powers. I'm sitting down with some of the most successful attorneys so you can learn how they made it to the top of the legal industry. You'll hear their advice for how you can forge your unique path to success. Katy, welcome to Corner Office. I'm so excited to have you here. So we've known each other personally for, 7 years now. My husband, Michael, went to law school at University of Michigan with you and your late husband, Brian. And I'm really glad we can talk about your career. So I want to start from kind of the beginning. Tell us who you are, what you do.
Absolutely. So I'm Katy McNeil. I am a lawyer, to put not too fine a point on it. I have been a lawyer for, it's been about 11 years since Michael and I and Brian graduated from the University of Michigan Law School. And I have been working in more or less the same field since I graduated law school and started in May of 2015. I have worked my entire career in Chicago. I'm a big proponent of the Chicago legal market. I started my career at a law firm that was based in Chicago. And from there, went up the ranks, moved up the ranks from junior, first from summer associate in the summer of 2014 and moved to junior associate, mid-level, senior associate, and the first tier of partnership there. Took a step back when I had some family challenges earlier this year and decided, as part of all of the changes that were happening, that it made sense to move my career to a different platform. So I started at A&O Shearman and Sterling, shortened to A&O Shearman, earlier this year, about 3 months ago. And we opened the Chicago office for A&O Shearman. And we're very excited to be part of the inaugural Chicago office for the firm, which is making inroads. The focus of my practice is primarily project finance and other renewable energy financing type transactions. So I'm a transactional lawyer. I work mostly drafting contracts, and the area in which I work is primarily renewable energy.
Perfect. How did you know you wanted to be a lawyer? Did you grow up with lawyers?
I didn't, not really. I didn't have lawyers in my family. I grew up in West Virginia. My parents, one was a steelworker, a union steelworker, and one was a nurse. And I had every inclination of just getting out of West Virginia and going and doing something that I could be really proud and excited to do. So first I went to the University of Chicago. I was an English major, and I thought I might want to do book publishing, book editing. I thought that would be a fun field because I loved reading and books so much. And I still love reading and books. It's still a really important part of what I do outside of work, which is always important to have hobbies and things that you like to do outside of work. So I worked for the University of Chicago Press when I was there and got a very fun and unique internship working for a book agent in London when I was an undergrad, and thought that would be a really fun and interesting thing to do. But one of my favorite parts of my job was actually working on the contracts that we would have with the authors and the people who were coming in. I found that component really interesting and fascinating, where you got to negotiate around the edges. So when I graduated in 2010 from the University of Chicago, I decided to take a little bit of a different path and decided to do proofreading, legal proofreading particularly. So I was working on contracts, and actually our account was one of the legacy firms that I now work for. It was the Shearman and Sterling account, which is very
What?
yes. So everything all comes back and merges back together. So I was working on proofreading very long and dense legal contracts. I applied to law school. I will tell you, I had not put the most amount of thought into applying to law school. So I did it really late in the cycle the first time around and got an admission to the University of Michigan, but would be for the next calendar year and was a deferred admission. And I was really excited to go to Michigan. It was everything that I had kind of missed doing an undergrad. I went to a school that didn't have very many sports. It was a Division III school, was kind of the opposite. It was in a large city instead of a small college town. So it was everything I thought I had missed out on in my undergrad days. And so I was really excited to get to be part of that community. And so I accepted my offer. I continued working with the firm, got more experience doing that. And then the next year I started at the University of Michigan. And I did know going in, I really wanted to be a transactional lawyer. A lot of people going into law school don't have that background or don't even know what transactional lawyers do. So I was really lucky to be in a place that I knew what transactional law was. I knew it was something that interested me. And I knew that it was something that I would want to be at a really large firm to be able to really be working on the top caliber of deals and transactions. So it helped shape a lot of my interests and pursuits, certainly going into kind of the on-campus interviewing process. So I was ready when I went through that process with the type of work I wanted to do, the type of firm I wanted to work at. I knew I wanted to be back in Chicago. So I was lucky enough to find a firm at the time that kind of ticked all of those boxes. And it was a really great decision for me.
So you didn't go straight through like so many law students do, where you had work experience. You came with more clarity than just about anyone I know about the type of law you wanted to practice. Do you see that as being a big advantage to you throughout law school and even starting as an associate compared to if you would have just gone straight through?
I do. I really do. And I highly recommend that people who are on the fence get a couple of years of work experience in. It's something I really admire about a number of law schools, some of which actually require or almost require that you do have that period of working in any sort of environment, because coming into work at a law firm is very challenging for a number of reasons. It is demanding. It causes you to have to make decisions every day about where your own priorities are and how your career is going to go, what areas you want your career to be focused on. And the more that you can have very little things already knocked out. You know what it means to chat with colleagues over the water cooler. You know what it means to get up every day, get ready, commute into an office and get ready to go for the day. The more that the little things are kind of, I've done that for a few years. I know what that's like. And the little things of working in an office aren't going to matter.
And, you say these little things, these are really big things that you learn, I think, in having your first job out of college. What do you chat about in the office? Like, what's appropriate for small talk? Or, when I talk to a lot of first years a few months in, one of the biggest issues they're having is, I just am not used to waking up at 6 a.m., working all day, 5 days a week. I have no winter break anymore. I have no summers off. It's like these things that it's not even the actual work that's the hardest part. It's getting used to operating in a professional environment and understanding just social norms and how to present yourself. And so I see a huge advantage for those who had a career before going to law school.
I couldn't agree with you more. And something that I've always admired about what you do and what your focus is the communication, particularly amongst different generations. So for a lot of people, this might be their first experience when they work out of undergrad of talking to somebody who is their parents' age, but isn't their parent, right? Like that, and that's a really important life skill to learn because there's such a difference, as we've talked about so much, in how different people of different generations communicate with one another, their values, their inherent, what they believe to be the right path forward. And there is something to be said about having that experience where you have interacted with people and maybe it even wasn't the best interaction, but at least you have that experience and know, okay, when I talk about this particular aspect of my social life or of how I'm approaching work or the fact that I don't want to get up at 6 in the morning and commute into the office, here's how it's going to be perceived by somebody who's not my peer, my classmate, even a law professor or a professor. It's still a different sort of working environment when you have a uh, an actual relationship with a manager or with a supervisor.
Yeah, I see some first year associates, even I can tell they feel most uncomfortable working with people who they see as kind of their parents' age or their friends' parents' age because they'll refer to partners as Miss McNeil or Mr. Smith. And I'm like, oh my gosh, please do not do that. You're a colleague of theirs. Yes, there's a hierarchy, but that's a no-go in the working world.
I could not agree more. I have gotten the thank you notes from law students starting with Miss McNeil. And I I've never personally held it against somebody for doing that. People are raised in all different cultures and environments. And obviously there are cultures where you would never speak to somebody who is above you or in a different age bracket without giving them some honorific of that type. So I get that it's a very hard habit to break out of, but I will say if there are law students listening to the podcast, please, please, please do not start your emails to partners or anyone in a law firm with anything but their first name. They're only ever addressed by their first name, by colleagues, by associates, by everyone. So to the extent that you can curb that instinct to do that, I would highly recommend it.
Right. Agreed. So you mentioned you wanted to go to Michigan to have kind of that quintessential college experience or just education experience. We
Yeah.
don't need to spend time talking about did you have fun at U of M because I know you did. I've seen the
You know,
pictures.
yeah.
I've heard the stories. One thing that I think is so unique is there was an adjunct professor that you had at Michigan who you've now worked with for 11 years. Tell us about that.
I was incredibly lucky not only to know the area that I wanted to pursue, but to meet somebody during my law school career that has been a mentor and advisor to me for, as you mentioned, the last 11, 12, 13 years at this point since we had our first class, I think in 2012. So I knew I wanted to work in energy. It was something that I had grown up around energy. I'd grown up in an energy community. I understand the importance of energy to our nation and to our nation's security, and energy is clearly just becoming more prevalent and important as part of the overall national conversation. And it was something that I didn't know what area or focus that would take. But my personal opinion on it at the time was that we needed to move away from heavily carbon emitting types of energy. It was something, it's an area that I feel really passionate about personally. And I was interested in pursuing that professionally if it was at all possible. And many law students feel like there are things I'm personally passionate about, but I don't know if those will translate into professional endeavors. It's very hard to make that very tiny gap fit. So I was taking as many classes in law school as I can in my area of interest. So I took every energy class, oil and gas class, electricity class, water law, all of it that would in some way lead to perhaps a career working on energy transactions. One of the classes that I took happened to be renewable energy project finance. And as you mentioned, the professor of that class, the adjunct professor, was a practicing lawyer named Paul Astolfi. And Paul was working at Mayor Brown in Chicago. He was commuting to Ann Arbor once a week to teach our class. And we were learning about what it looked like to actually practice in this field as part of his commitment to the class. Paul was very much a a teacher who could explain things in a very distilled manner that was very approachable for a law student, for somebody who didn't have an incredibly strong background, technical background in energy or in finance. I was an English major. I didn't have the technical skills on either side. It was just an interest and it was a pursuit. So I knew I had a lot to learn. And Paul was a fantastic teacher. So I decided to go to the firm that he was working at with the hopes of hopefully working with him. And I did get the opportunity as a summer associate to work with him. And so I was able to say, I want to work in the finance group. I want to work with Paul when I come back. And that was given its due. I was allotted into the finance group when I started back as an associate and almost immediately started working on transactions with Paul and with the rest of the team that was doing project finance at Mayor Brown.
I know very few attorneys who feel so grateful to be working for and working with, the partners that they're spending their day in and day out with. And you mentioned that with delegation, it's easier and faster to do it yourself the first time. And then you gain these efficiencies over time. And that's something it sounds like Paul really believed in. Like you had someone who was invested in your development, who put in the time to teach you and coach you. And I'm sure that just about every law student or associate is thinking, well, I'd really like to work with someone like that. So how did you build a relationship with Paul and kind of position yourself to work on his team?
I think there's a number of things. I think the first thing for people who are looking for that type of mentor is to find somebody that you are personally and professionally gelling with and fitting with. I do think there's value in finding somebody whose teaching style aligns very closely with your own learning style. I think that's a really important thing to look for as you're looking for a mentor or somebody who's going to supervise you. The other areas of focus that you can have are looking towards how you're going to develop over your career. What sorts of places are going to offer you those developmental opportunities? Those can come in many different shapes and sizes. A lot of firms offer training programs and training modules that are really helpful in helping you find skills that are really critical for partners in a law firm and that are not taught in law school. So I was really lucky in that my law firm put together a business school module for mid-level associates. That was something that I didn't have exposure to as a law student or before law school because I wasn't in a business field. But what we're doing every day as partners in a law firm is running the law firm, which is not it is not totally different from running a company. And one of the gripes a lot of people have with law firms are that, in fact, they could be run a lot better. That it's a bunch of lawyers running them, and it could be business people running them. Our professional rules require that partners in a limited partnership are lawyers, and many of us don't have business backgrounds. Many of us haven't had business experience. So it is frequently incumbent upon the law firm itself to offer the opportunities to learn those business skills. And that can be in the form of, like I talked about, having a business module directed towards mid-level associates. That can also come just through experience, asking the questions to the right people, talking to your CFO, going to the financial presentations that your firm offers, seeing the metrics by which your firm and therefore your own performance are going to be judged. All of that is really important. And it's all part of what I call the extracurricular activities that you have at a law firm. And it is very easy to ignore the extracurricular activities. It's very easy to say, I don't want to do that because it's not going to be on my billable hour sheet at the end of the year, and therefore nobody is judging me on that. I think that that is a a flawed way of thinking about it. I think the stronger way of thinking about it is that you are developing these skills by which you are being judged, even if it's not as black and white as the billable hour log. There are skills that you need to learn if you are going to be entrusted with being one of the partners running the firm. And it's incumbent upon each individual to learn those for themselves.
So everything you said, I'm just thinking, yes, yes, and yes. You know, there's such a focus on the billable hours and getting credit. And even sometimes with professional development programs that we're leading, we'll have associates say, well, I'm not going to come to that if I'm not getting billable credit for it. Yeah, it's not counting towards your hours, but you need to understand how to communicate effectively and present your ideas with confidence and competence so that you can be a successful lawyer. So it all ultimately leads to skill development. And I think that desire to learn, that curiosity, the ability to see the bigger picture is so foundational in someone's success in this career. Something that you talked a lot about, it, or maybe the theme that I got from it, is this intentionality in thinking about where you're going to be successful, whether it's who you're going to be working for, the firm that you're at, the work that you're doing. Your practice group recently left Mayer Brown and joined A&O. Tell us how that came about.
We were working in an area that is incredibly turbulent right now. We are working in an area that's incredibly turbulent right now. Renewable energy as an industry has had a foundational and core component of building the projects and of monetizing the projects, federal tax credits. And the federal tax credits are currently under siege by the current Congress, and a lot of changes have just been introduced in recent legislation to curb the ability of renewable energy projects to access federal tax credits. It's an industry that is absolutely looking for cutting edge legal advice and looking for ways to really comply with regulations, but also keep all of the projects profitable while a lot of, in addition to the tax credits, there are tariff issues. There are a lot of issues that are coming to a head that people are dealing with day in and day out. And we took stock of that environment, and it was important to us that we were offering the absolute best and most up to date legal advice to our clients. And we found a platform that was incredibly versatile, incredibly global. So, looking at things from a global standpoint, A&O Shearman has a ton of lawyers, and 2/3 of them are outside of the US. So we are
Wow.
able to, yeah, it's great. So we are able to utilize the platform and look at how are certain issues being addressed in Europe right now. For example, we joined a team where the energy, natural resources, and infrastructure group is a core component of the firm. We stand alone our own vertical at the firm. So everyone that is working in this industry sits in a separate vertical. So unlike being pigeonholed, shoehorned into the finance group or into the corporate group, we stand alone, and we bring capabilities from the finance world, from the corporate M&A world, and from the LATAM world, and we bring all of those together and are able to offer this service to our client through the vertical. So it's a fantastic group. We're really excited to have joined, and it's been really great for helping us meet our clients' needs at this really turbulent time.
It sounds like you and the group found such an excellent fit. What have you learned going through the process about what maybe a lateral, someone who's thinking about lateraling should be considering or doing to also find themselves at their great next firm?
And lateraling to a new law firm is a very tedious and at times difficult process. You're relearning. I was at the same firm for 10 years, over 10 years. And so moving to a new law firm has a lot of challenges associated with it. You're upending your entire professional network in some ways, and learning how to be part of a new firm. So it's something that people absolutely don't do lightly. And it's something that you want to give a lot of thought to. So it's a great question. How do you compare different firms? How do you decide that it's worth making this major change to your career and to your network? So the things we were really looking for were, and obviously I'm looking at this from the angle, as you said, of moving an entire team over. So looking for a place where the team is going to fit in. Individuals who are looking just for their own sake. It may be different if you are not also looking to bring a team over. You might just be more focused on what does the rest of the team look like? And that's a really important question. We were lucky enough to be moving more or less a team over. So we were looking for how the team would fit in. But the things that we were looking for, it was the capabilities across the globe of being able to really service our clients' needs and what that looked like. we wanted to join a firm that was really collaborative and that had a great culture. I had been at a firm that had been headquartered in Chicago, and I love Chicago. I love Chicago as a city. I love it as a legal cultural community. I really do think it's a fantastic place to practice law. And we joined a firm with no Chicago office. So there was obviously not a large Chicago cultural presence in the firm, but the firm's culture did fit very well with ours. It is a very collaborative culture. It's a culture where people really want to help their partners succeed and to grow.
You had so many factors to consider when thinking about which firm to join in terms of, global presence and expertise and existing practice groups and the associates who you wanted to join you in this move. You also were navigating all of this during a really difficult time in your personal life. Your husband had been diagnosed with ALS. You had just had your second child. How did you factor in, the culture of a firm where they're going to be understanding of the reality of what was going on in your personal life? Like, how do you also get a pulse on, is this a place where I can be accepted for who I am as a human being and all the other things going on in my life?
I think everyone has their own challenges. I have found that it's really important to be honest about my own personal challenges. So I talk openly about my husband's journey with ALS, and he passed earlier this year, as you're aware, and our family's navigation of that grief. It is a very core component of who I am as a person. And if there's one theme I hope that I'm hitting on today, I hope it's that who you are as a person is who you are as a lawyer, is who you are as whatever you decide your occupation is going to be. So I find that honesty really is the best policy. I was very upfront. I, in fact, did a lot of media. I had a lot of media opportunities, and I took advantage of those primarily to help shed light on a really terrible disease and how it impacts the individuals who are diagnosed, as well as their family, their loved ones, those close to them. So it was important for Brian and myself that we were very open and honest about the realities of the disease, which aren't always pretty and aren't always fun to talk about. A lot of people don't want to address those things head on because they're so challenging to talk about. It takes so much of your humanity and who you are as a person. The disease, it chips away at it. It truly limits your ability to do almost anything that you don't even consciously understand as part of who you are as a human being. In Brian's case, first it impacted his speech, and then it impacted the remaining muscles that he had in his face and in his bulbar area, which is kind of your throat, and other very important, your swallowing, your ability to eat food, eat solid food, and then moved throughout his limbs. So his ability to move his arms, move his legs, walk, hold a phone, hold his daughters. Every component of it was slowly being chipped away at. And when he passed away earlier this year, he had complete inability to speak. He had complete inability to even discuss his needs or wants by typing something out. the only way he could communicate with us was through an eye gaze machine that tracked his eye movements, very frequently poorly tracked his eye movements. So we had to wait for a very long time for him to express what it was he wanted to say. And frequently he couldn't fully express that. So absolutely had a terrible disease, had a really tough time and dealing with that. And it was important for me to be open and honest with people in my career that all of this was happening, because it was absolutely something that was the front and center of my own thoughts and my own focus, my priorities. So I looked towards the people who supported me, and I was incredibly lucky to have partners, law firm partners, who absolutely stepped up, did what people hope that you'll do in times of need and trauma like that, and did it without looking for gratitude, did it just because it was the right thing to do. So having a culture like that, and as you point out, moving our entire team and having a culture that's likewise going to do that for somebody that they haven't known for as long of a time was a really important part of it. I will say that part of law firm bureaucracy meant that we did not officially start at the law firm until April of this year, but we had actually made the decision of where we were going to move many months prior to that. And so I was lucky in that Brian was able to weigh in on my decision and able to help me navigate the complexities of, do we move the team or do we not? And was able to be part of that conversation and that decision with me.
I think you, handled such a devastating situation with grace and transparency. And, from a friend's perspective, it was almost as if in your approach to communicating this to work, you decided, I don't have a choice. I cannot hide what's going on in my personal life. And you gave people the opportunity to prove themselves. And they proved themselves in the best way possible of showing up for you, being understanding, going above and beyond to support you and your entire family. And it's really a testament to your decision making throughout your career of thinking about, who do I want to work with every single day, both in terms of setting myself up professionally, and when the inevitable curveballs of life hit, are these the people who I want to have surrounding me in acknowledgement of personal life realities? So, Katy, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story, your career with us. I'm grateful to have you as a friend. I'm grateful to have you on the podcast, and really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Corner Office with me, Elise Powers. Be sure to follow me on LinkedIn for weekly tips on how to accelerate your career. If you're loving this podcast, I would be so grateful if you'd click follow on your favorite listening platform. While you're there, give us a 5-star rating. If you're interested in having me speak at your organization, or if you have topics you'd like us to cover on the podcast, send me a note at info@eleviewconsulting.com. That's info@ELEVIEW consulting.com. All opinions expressed by Elise and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Eleview Consulting or any law firm. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as legal advice or the basis for legal decisions.